Okay, we are live October 30th. How is everybody doing? Got some big news here. Some big stuff coming out yesterday with the Bloc Québécois. The Bloc is fed up apparently, and I found this quite interesting because they've been trying to push a vote of non-confidence in Trudeau for a bit now. They had numerous opportunities to do so with Poilievre, but only until now, when Trudeau has not met their requirements, as they claim, they are now willing to push a vote of non-confidence in Trudeau. And apparently, this could be happening. Very well could be happening. But I guess we will see. Let's see what the Bloc leader has to say here. I've got two clips in English ready to go.
Can you just outline in English for us where the Bloc Québécois' position is?
I'm sorry, we'll have to start
Just
again.
in English, can you outline what the Bloc Québécois' position is after the deadline has not been met by the Liberals?
I'm sorry.
Can you outline what your party's position is now that the deadline has not been met by the Liberals?
Our party position is exactly what we said 5 weeks ago. The government was invited to pass into laws two bills that came from the Bloc Québécois, but were approved and supported by all parties in the Parliament. They had until October 29th, which is today, to deliver that, which they did not do. We said 5 weeks ago that if we were not to receive that, if 4 million of Canadians between 65 and 74 years old were not to receive what we asked, if producers under supply management regime were not to get what we asked, we were to start discussing with opposition parties in order to have this government fall. And this is exactly what we are starting to do as of now.
Are you open to another conversation? If the government comes to you today, tomorrow, even the day after, are you open to a conversation to keep that going if you get what you want?
Have they come to us yesterday or the day before? No, we haven't got what we wanted. If before, of course, if before they fall, they give us all we have asked under the terms that we have described, we don't have a choice but to take it. But we are not negotiating anything as we speak. We are negotiating with opposition parties in order to have the government be.
So that will mean your support as well. If they give you what you ask for, even if it's after this date, does that mean they regain your support?
Let's say that if they give us exactly all we have asked for before they fall, because if there's a vote tomorrow, they might fall tomorrow, we will look into it and we will be coherent with all what we have said so far. We want precisely what is in Bill 3, C319 and in Bill C282. Bring that to us and we'll discuss. But in the meantime, they are seriously in danger to fall.
They are in serious danger to fall. Interesting. This is a slippery slope because if Trudeau and the Liberals just give them what they want, then they're going to take it and this non-confidence vote is not going to happen. But if they don't, which they're claiming they haven't, yesterday, obviously the 29th, they had the opportunity to discuss the elderly pension. I believe it was an increase in how much people over 64 to 75 made from their pension. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's what I believe it was. The government has failed to, I guess, give the Bloc what they wanted. But if the Liberal government all of a sudden just said, well, here you go, I have a feeling, like I said, this vote is going to be swept under the rug. Plus, the Bloc had many opportunities to do this non-confidence vote as Pierre was hammering Trudeau almost day after day at one point in time, trying to get him out. So I find it kind of funny that, all of a sudden the Bloc is willing to play this game. We have a little bit more. We have another English section here to go through, so let's get into this as well.
Est-ce Are you committing, just to be clear, are you committing to voting against the government on every confidence vote moving forward?
It depends on the way it's written. You know, if it's against the values of Quebec in terms of language, in terms of secularity of the state, in terms of immigration, in terms of environment, we're not stupid. We will not go against what we are. This is why I say the most simple way to do it is a motion that says that the chamber, the parliament, removes its support, its confidence in this government, and that's the end to it. The tradition being what it is, the Prime Minister should walk to the house of the General Governor and say, okay, let's call an election.
Jean-Yves Duclos called it an artificial ultimatum today, this morning at Cabinet Inns. What's your answer to that?
He said a few days ago something absolutely fascinating. He said, you have to be in the government in order to do something. He's not going to do something anytime soon. So opposition have a role. We have something to do. We have probably changed a majority of bills which have been adopted in this parliament, making those bills better for Quebecers. This is the way a parliament works. So saying that being government is godlike, being in opposition is nothing, like both Mr. Duclos and Mr. Poiliev seem to say those days, is a lack of respect for the choice that people do. And if being in opposition is useless, I will say that the Conservatives have been useless for 9 years, and that the Liberals might become useless soon.
Okay, so that was just a big nothing answer in my opinion. I have no idea what he was trying to get out there. But yeah, it appears that depending on how it's written, this could pass or not. The Quebecois, just like, yeah, flip-flop, exactly. Flip-flop block. That's exactly it. Okay, we got some Twitter things, or X, sorry, to look into. Jagmeet Singh says he won't push a vote of no confidence against Trudeau. My God, this guy, he cannot stay consistent to save his life. He threw Canadians under the bus for his pension. Then during question period said that the NDP is a people over party, which is not true. And constantly pointing the fingers at the Liberals while being in a coalition with them, and is now saying he won't push a vote against Trudeau. Oh my God, the NDP actually, I think I lose IQ. Like, I can feel my brain melting every time they do anything.
An emergency now. Other parties like the Bloc have put forward their priorities, and they're willing to take down the government based off of the government's inaction. Why is this motion not a no confidence motion? Why don't you force the government to do this because it's an emergency, as you say, or be forced to go to an election?
Well, if you look at the past couple of years, we've been able to force the government to do things they didn't want to do. And we've been successful in doing so. The dental care program is something the Liberals voted against. They were opposed to it. They never wanted to do it. We forced them to bring it in. And now seniors are getting dental care for the first time in their lives, many of them. Kids are able to go to the dentist and look after their teeth, which is preventing illnesses, keeping them healthier, ensuring that they're going to have better outcomes in their lives. So we've gotten things done this way. So what we're putting it on the table. We believe the Liberals have failed to address the question of access. And we know the Conservatives are threatening the access to this right and are threatening the fundamental right itself. So we're putting forward our vision. We need to make sure this is treated as serious, and we have immediate action to expand access. We're going to put forward an opposition day motion, and we'll see how the parties vote on it. And we're going to use the pressure that we have with our allies, with folks that are listening. If you believe it's important to defend not just the right, but access to this right, then join us. If you're looking at the Liberal Party and you're seeing them focus on themselves and not on your issues, join us. We're here for you. We're ready to fight for you, and we care about what people are going through. That's why we're presenting real motions that respond to the needs of people, responding to the fears of Conservatives who want to cut access to abortions and attack the right. We're putting forward a motion to say no. We're going to defend the right and defend access to the right.
All right, so just a bunch of fucking BS from Jagmeet. A bunch of, we're going to do this. We plan on doing this. We forced the government to do this, that, and the fourth. The only thing the NDP has done is make Parliament's life that much harder, make Canadians' lives that much harder. And they're just a joke party. And I really hope that we get something better than the NDP. They got to step down. They got to go. They don't provide anything for Canada. And I just don't see them. And even if they did get in power, it would be a disaster like no other. Our country would be annihilated from the inside out. I don't understand why the NDP even bother at this point. We got a funny video here, though. On a scale of 1 to 10, how delusional has Trudeau become? Trudeau genuinely believes he'll win the next election.
This is your first sit down, I think, since all this happened. You're not resigning. You're staying on as Liberal
I had a press conference yesterday,
yes.
I am determined to lead this party into the next election because we need to put all our tools together, and I am actually really excited about this fight. I think the opportunity to allow Canadians to make the best possible choice for the future is what we all get into politics for, to make a difference, to pitch an argument, and to connect with Canadians in a way that gives them optimism and a realistic plan for the future. That's what we're in the business of, and that's what I'm excited about.
Absolutely. This is your
Oh, he's excited, all right. Hey, Stratford, nobody's forcing you to be here. You could go do whatever you want with your life. Have a fantastic day. Let's move on to the next part here. Liberal Housing Minister Sean Fraser calls the Freedom Convoy the J6 of Canada. This was in question period yesterday, and I can't believe the words that come out of the Liberals' mouths. They're so deranged. They truly are. They sit here talking about American politics before trying to enact on Canadian policies. They constantly drag in Orange Man bad, Trump this, Trump that, mega maple syrup. Come on, man. It is insane. But let's take a look at this.
Mr. Speaker, I sometimes ask myself where they found this guy. He twists the facts to suit his narrative whenever he wants. It's almost like the Conservative Party, when looking for a new leader, hopped on Temu, typed in far-right Conservative, and then spit this guy out instead. He opposes investments in affordable housing. He borrows lessons from his cousins south of the border when he opposes birth control for women. During the January 6th of Canada, the convoy, he wasn't just telling people to stand by, he was bringing them coffee in the streets. Mr. Speaker, it might be election season in America. We don't need this far right-wing populism here at home.
The Honour... Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, speaking of leadership contestants, that member must be so uptight and angry because the polling shows that though Canadians want to fire that Prime Minister, the Housing Minister ranks dead last in the polls to replace him. And why wouldn't he? This is the guy who lost track of 1 million people when he was Immigration Minister. Right. He ignored warnings from his own department that letting in 200% more people would cause a housing shortage. And his own government spent the last week trashing his entire immigration record. How can arrogance and incompetence so comfortably reside in one man?
Yeah, that was from yesterday's question period. Just a little recap of the Liberals and how deranged they are. Now, I got some interesting news here. Apparently, Canadians have been crossing the border and illegally voting for Trump. I do not, and I repeat, do not condone this. I do not endorse this kind of action. The American voting system is so incredibly broken, they do not ask for ID of any shape or form. They do not ask. So people here in Canada are going across the border and voting for Trump. Now look, like I said, I do not endorse this. But we are currently, as a country, right now, dealing with foreign interference in our last election with China. We are currently, our country, right now, dealing with foreign interference, possibly with India. we are dealing with foreign interference from multiple different countries here in Canada, and now we have Canadians going over and doing more or less the exact same thing in the United States. Like I said, I do not approve of this. I'm not endorsing this. But, man, we can't sit here, bitch and complain about countries meddling in our elections and foreign interference, and then go and do the exact same thing. That's just, I don't know. That's just not how I look at that. You could do whatever you please, but just know that if you do get caught, there will be some serious consequences for it. But they do not check. They do not check for IDs at all. And I think the American election system is incredibly broken because of that. Incredibly broken. All right, let's get into some, I guess, headline politics here while we wait
constructive relationship
for the next big thing to happen today. Obviously, question period. Everybody's waiting to see what happens. Will the Bloc pull through with what they said? I kind of doubt it. I really do. I really don't believe the Bloc is going to do so. What do you guys think in the chat? Let me know what you guys think. You think the Bloc is going to flip-flop? Do you think the Bloc is just pulling up a card here to try and make it seem like they're... I don't even know. What do you guys think? You think they will? 2 flips, 4 twists? You think they actually will? I hope they do. Today could be a very big day. Today could be massive. Very well could be. I don't know, though. You don't think so, Jennifer? You don't think... I think if the Bloc was really about it, it would have happened already. But they have been waiting for the Liberals to give them whatever it was that they wanted with the elderly pension, the raise in the pension, and they haven't come through with it yet. Timely to coincide with Trump winning as well. We could, if Kamala gets into office, my God, that's all I gotta say. My God. Not sure. They say he's a man of his word. I don't know. The Bloc makes me hate Quebec, and that's sad. Yeah, a lot of people do not like the Bloc. Nothing will happen based on the past. They bow to Trudy. Only one with balls is Pierre. No, they will not, unfortunately. Per usual, nothing will happen. The Bloc should not even exist. I agree. They should not exist as a federal level party that pretty much only runs in Quebec. I think it's very strange that I don't want to say that they can get away with what they want to get away with. That's not entirely true, but when you look at it, I'm sure they could get away with a lot more than the average party. They like to think of themselves as a state on their own, Quebec as its own place. You notice when the Bloc talks about Canadians, they don't say Canadians, they say Quebecers. They say the people of Quebec. They never say Canadians. It's always Quebec before everybody else. A federal party that only represents one province. Yeah. They always say Quebecers and all Canadians. Do they? I always hear them only say Quebecers. Maybe I'm not paying attention half the time. That's a fair assessment. I don't think the Bloc should be able to vote on issues that they don't deal with on a provincial and federal level. Change is inevitable. It's only a matter of time before something happens. It's only a matter of time before a big change in the political system comes, or I don't know. Like there's some things that I could say, but I can't say here on YouTube. But like it's only a matter of time before the people get truly fed up. You know what I mean? Like if they're gonna keep claiming they're for Canadians, that they want to help Canadians, that they're enacting and enabling policies that are going to help Canadians, but at the same time, scandal after scandal, over $400 million of taxpayer money goes missing. These different programs, like these healthcare programs for children, but then they also want to push abortion across the board. I don't know. There's a lot of weird things going on that they claim that they are for Canadians. I don't buy it. I do not buy it a lot of the time. They say they're for Canadians, but are pushing the assisted death program constantly. They are constantly pushing it. We looked at an article yesterday. A woman wanted a wheelchair ramp. A Paralympian wanted a wheelchair ramp for her house. And the official or the doctor or whoever said, well, have you thought about dying instead? Have you thought about MAID instead? That is our government. Yesterday in question period, they literally went on a debate for about 10 minutes or so about the MAID program. Our politicians are debating a program that is assisted dying. Like, our country sucks. I don't know what else to say. It truly does. When our politicians are more concerned about giving Canadians assisted death than actually fixing the problems at hand. I don't know what else to say. A bunch of corrupt insanity. Ontario can be a country. I don't know if we have enough. Well, maybe the steel industry, right? Maybe like Stelco and all that. I would say Alberta probably has the best chance of becoming its, I guess, own country, but they would probably just go to the States. And remember that 400 million is only a portion of what they investigated. Yeah, it's they've started undercutting how much it is. They've started saying the over 350 million in tax dollars. They've started undercutting the amount. So I don't know. It's very strange that we have politicians in office that, you know, they're playing the game. They're playing the game. They're not helping Canadians when they claim they are. Both sides, any side. The Conservatives, the Liberals, the NDP, the Bloc, they all have their own agendas realistically at the end of the day. Right? There's no doubting that. There's no denying that. My whole philosophy at the end of the day is, I'm not a big fan of the Conservatives, but I really fucking hate the Liberals, and if the Bloc or NDP got into power, it would simply be the destruction of our country. All I can really say is, do your research, make your own decision, don't be a one issue or one topic voter. We see this a lot with the Conservatives now. They keep talking about this carbon tax election. They keep talking about this carbon tax election. They want an election solely based off the carbon tax. It's what they consistently say. But Canadians want an election across the board. We want all of Canada to become better. We don't simply just want the carbon tax to be removed, even though that would be pretty awesome. I can't lie. Remove the carbon tax. That's a great step in the direction that we need to bringing this country back to where it was. Conservative is the best way to go. As of right now, I mean, there's a lot of people who want to vote for either independents or the Green Party or the NDP. I don't understand why. Like, there's not much going for these parties. Especially the Green Party, okay? I don't know what the fuck they would do if they got into power. I voted Liberals while on disability years ago, then switched to Conservatives after the policies. Now I'm married and moved out of Canada and live with my wife in the Philippines. It's cheaper here. Yeah, it probably would be. It's insane how much things have gone up here over the past 20 years. If you just isolate the past 20 years alone, things have skyrocketed to levels that we probably should not be at, that we should have never seen coming. So many more problems than just the carbon tax. Exactly. And that's something that the Conservatives, they keep saying, we want a carbon tax election. Give the Canadians a carbon tax election. Yes, while I agree, the carbon tax isn't doing anyone any favors. You're not stopping hurricanes by throwing money at them. You're not going to stop forest fires by throwing money at them. You're not going to change the weather by throwing money at it. Simple as that. I'm sorry. It's just, there's no way throwing a couple $1 million at a hurricane is going to stop the hurricane from forming. But yeah, there's so many more problems than just the carbon tax. We do need a flat-out election. A flat-out election. There should only be two parties. I don't agree with that. I think there should be people, if they want to run, if they think they have a plan or something, and they can run, and they believe in themselves, and they have people backing them, they should absolutely be able to do so. But realistically, if you vote for these people, you vote, for example, like the PPC, they can only do so much, or the Green Party can only do so much when they have minimum seats, when they don't have a majority government. Pierre Poilievre for PM, bring on the carbon tax election. Prices are never going down. Don't kid yourself. These will be low prices. People are greedy. That'll never change. That's another thing, right? Even if they did cut taxes, if they did cut all these things, are the big companies really going to drop their prices? I don't think so. I really don't. But at the end of the day, it should bring down the cost of fuel. At the very least, you would think so. But I don't know. I don't know. I think conservatives will also handle the immigration issues, though, not just the tax cut. Yeah, we have some major issues with immigration, record high levels of immigration. We have people here that we can't house, people here that we can't feed. I don't know why we're bringing in over 1 million people. Over 1 million people. Let's see. I gotta find this. There was a immigration numbers 2024, Canada 2024. The actual Canadian government website themselves. Let's see here. My God. All categories, 2025 target, 500,000, 500,000 new permanent residents in 2025. Hold on, let me get the proper view here so you guys can see. Close the borders, plain and simple. People aren't becoming more conservative, they're just done with the identity obsession. That's another thing I've said, and I've said many times. The middle, where people usually were, 20 years ago, most people, you would say, were middle left-leaning. But the left has gone so extreme, so incredibly far left, that the middle is now closer to the right. And most people that have sat in the middle and were middle left are now middle right. Because the left has just become so insane, so incredibly deranged. This is the Canadian government website, by the way. I will scroll up to the top here so you have the proof. 2024 consultations on immigration levels, final report. And Trudeau, he just realized how bad it truly is. And he's like, well, if I get back into as prime minister, I'm going to cut the amount of people coming in. Okay, buddy, you've had your chance. You've had your chance. It's time we move on. It's time we move on. Request to all Canadian citizens and permanent residents, please sign the petition. What petition is this? I don't even know what you're going on about. I'm not promoting any petitions here. If I have... that is true. That is true, August. If you have 10 wives, that is your business. When they call us far right, they are calling us... Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Absolutely. They absolutely are. Okay, I don't know, we got a while here. We got a bit of time, so I'm gonna try. Let's get some CPAC stuff going on here. Let's see. We got about 40 minutes until question period begins. I believe BC sadly went to the NDP. Is this true? BC election. Oh no, David Eby vows to repair divided province. Won't rule out trying to topple BC NDP government. BC NDP expected to form slim majority government in 2024 election. Oh boy. That is not good. That is not good, is it?
Ready to go? Great. Good morning, everybody. It's very good to see you. I'm glad to see you. I'm glad to be here.
The petition is to stop the Speaker of the House from... Okay, I did see this petition. But I have no idea who has started it and who is the one behind it all.
It was an eventful campaign. Let me start by reflecting on the election result. I think this was a message that was sent certainly to me, to our government from British Columbians, that they expect us to do better on a number of key files. But equally, it was the opportunity for us to do better. And I am very grateful and honored by the opportunity presented by British Columbians to be able to do just that with the team that we're bringing to the legislature. The electeds that we're bringing to Victoria following yesterday's results are one of the most diverse and qualified groups of MLAs that this legislature has ever seen. I'm incredibly proud of them. They represent the first time ever in this province that the NDP has been elected.
I never blocked you, sold as is. I don't know what is going on there. The only people I block in the chat are people who spam. That is it. You're free to more or less say what you want to say as long as it's within YouTube TOS guidelines, or else I'll have to time you out. But no, I never, no. Yeah, all good. Let's get back to weird David Eby here.
3 times to serve, and we take that honor very seriously. And our goal here is to make sure that this place behind me works for British Columbians, especially on the priorities that were so evident during the campaign. The cost of living, the pressure that people are feeling on their monthly bills at the end of every month, feeling like they're just getting by or not even getting by, let alone getting ahead. The need for affordable housing, strong and safe communities, addressing
affordable housing. Isn't Vancouver, not is it? It literally is the most expensive place to live in all of Canada. And he's talking about affordable housing. Is this guy on drugs?
Big challenges like climate change, making sure this province is a welcoming place for everybody, and ensuring a strong healthcare system from corner to corner to corner of this beautiful province that we call home. That's what our work will be going forward. I'm honored to be asked to take it on. I met with the Lieutenant Governor, advised her that I believed that we could deliver the confidence of the legislature, and she invited us to form government. That work is underway. And I'm happy to take your questions and look forward to doing the work for British Columbians on the priorities they've sent us to work on.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. We have members of the media here in person as well as those on the phone line. For those on the phone line, please press *1 to enter the queue. All members of the media will be limited to 1 question and 1 follow-up. We're going to begin today with Richard Zussman from Global News. Go ahead, Richard.
When should we expect to be back here in a session? What is the priority for that? And are you going to be having negotiations with the Greens, even though you have now a majority government?
Well, there are 2 important pieces of work to do here. The first is we've got to choose a cabinet and make sure that that piece of work is done so that we can begin delivering for British Columbians. And the second is to make sure that the legislature works as well. And so having a sitting in the fall, the election and selection of a speaker, I would very much like to be able to do that and to get the legislature working as well. These are 2 important pieces of work. And beyond that, the conversations that are taking place with MLAs in the legislature are underway. Our goal is to work with any MLA that wants to make sure that this place works for British Columbians on those priorities that I laid out: cost of living, housing, healthcare, what matters to British Columbians. And so to that end, we're meeting with the Greens today. We're going to continue to have those conversations with them. And the invitation is open to all MLAs. If you're committed to these things, as well as committed to ensuring that this province remains a place welcoming to everybody, one where we fight racism and hatred, then I'm happy to work with you.
And Richard, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, California announced today some additional support for the film industry. It was something you promised during the campaign. Should we expect more here in British Columbia to try to keep up with the incentives California is putting in place in order to ensure that the sector can thrive here?
The message to film workers in British Columbia, who I know are feeling a lot of the pressures of the big streamers dialing back their budgets and other pressures facing the industry, is that we're in your corner. We're going to work with you to make sure that our industry is competitive, and we know that if we're competitive, we can bring in the big productions. And we're not going to be able to outbid the lowest common denominator bidders in the United States. But if we're competitive, combined with the amazing crews that we have here and the teams that we have, we can deliver some of the biggest productions available, given what we offer here in the province. And that's my commitment to them. We're going to work with you to make sure we're competitive and landing those big productions.
Our next question will come from Rob Buffum from CTV News. Go ahead, Rob.
Hi, Premier. Congratulations. Just hoping you can provide maybe a little bit more detail in terms of when a cabinet would be sworn in and when you expect a fall session. Would it be in November, the fall session? Is it more likely in December? Just some ballpark ideas there.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. We're a little bit in the hands of Elections BC here. The judicial recounts need to be complete, in my opinion, before we select the cabinet and have them sworn in. So we'll work with Elections BC on those timelines, but our goal will be as soon as possible after those results are finalized to have the cabinet in place and get to work for British Columbians.
And
was the cabinet and the fall session, would that be December?
So the goal is to get the cabinet sworn in, and then we're going to be able to have the fall sitting.
In December, November, you don't know?
It's hard. It's very dependent on Elections BC, the timing going forward here.
You made the point earlier in a press conference, and I think your team have said that you and your team have been reaching out to Conservatives as well, and the idea of maybe a Conservative Speaker of the House. Wanted to get your thoughts on whether that might be possible. I'm thinking of a candidate in Chilliwack, Cultus Lake, Warbus. Can you tell us, might we be looking at a Conservative Speaker of the House? Is that a possibility?
Well, I have had the opportunity to work with a number of people.
If you're having issues finding the channel, yeah, it's probably because of the name. It's a very common name. I would say if you're new here, hit the sub button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell. It does notify you whenever I am live and covering question period or House of Commons proceedings or whatever is happening. So that's really the only way I could say if you want to keep up to date. Other than that, yeah, YouTube is not going to be promoting my channel. No way.
People who were elected under the Conservative banner. They worked as BC Liberals and then as BC United. I haven't had the opportunity to work with all of the people who were elected as Conservatives in the recent election, but my commitment to every MLA that was elected is if you share our values around making sure this is a welcoming province for everyone, that we're going to fight hate and racism, these are non-negotiables for us, then we're happy to work with you to make sure that the legislature behind me works for British Columbians on those priorities that we all share. And so it's an open invitation to any MLA to work with us. There are a number of ways that MLAs could work with us to deliver for British Columbians. One of those ways is certainly Speaker. I know we've got some great candidates on our bench. I'm sure the Greens would be able to put forward a good Speaker, maybe the Conservatives. We're not ruling anything out.
Our next question will come from Les Lane from the Times Colonist. Go ahead, Les.
Thanks. Premier, election night, one of the first thoughts you had 11 o'clock or so was that you would absolutely acknowledge John Rustad speaking to people's frustrations with affordability, cost of living, and public safety and crime. I was just wondering, since that was your kind of initial outlay, is that how this thing almost got away from you?
I think that there are two parts to British Columbians' message to us. One is they absolutely want us to do better on those pieces. I think the Conservatives did a good job of speaking to people about issues that they're concerned about in their communities, public safety, that they're concerned about at home, affordability. Obviously, there were significant gaps between us and the Conservatives. I think the Greens did a good job speaking to British Columbians on issues of bureaucracy in the healthcare system and needing to get that closer to the communities that they serve through initiatives like their community health centers. And so for us, when you have a close election like this, where the vote was often split between us and the Greens and the Conservatives very tightly in different communities across the province, I think the message for us is to hear that and to both be appreciative of the opportunity British Columbians are presenting us to deliver on that message that they sent to us, but also recognize that we're going to need to work across the aisle on different initiatives.
I don't know why he's hyping up the Green Party so much. It's so weird. It's so weird. Nobody ever talks about them in like a positive light at all. It's fucking so strange.
To make sure we're responding to the message that we heard.
Like, what the hell is the Green Party going to do?
When you're building a cabinet, I'm just wondering about the interior BC, everywhere north of Hope. There's pretty slim pickings compared to the previous legislature. I don't have the count in front of me. You got maybe half a dozen, fewer than before. Is that a consideration? How are you going to represent or show some representation in cabinet from the mainland BC?
Yeah, we've elected some great MLAs from outside the Lower Mainland, but you're right. I do see an urban-rural divide in the election results that's very concerning to me. We need to govern for the entire province. We need to represent the.
Don't you think you might be part of that divide, Mr. David Eby? Oh my God, man.
Entire province, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that we're finding ways to reach out to and engage rural communities. And make sure that they're seeing themselves in the legislature as well. It's a province where we only succeed together. If one part of the province is not successful, then the whole province is going to struggle. We need to work together as British Columbians. That was a big message during the campaign, and one that we saw in the results as well. That we're going to have to do better on.
Our next question.
I thought they only had one seat. Do they actually have two? They're moving up in the world. They got
this
two.
Morning, a fall session. You've now said a fall sitting. Can you clarify whether it will be a fall session or a fall sitting, the difference between that? And also if you've been given any clarification from Elections BC. I know there's the November 4th deadline, but when those recounts might be done.
Yeah, thanks, Alec. Yes, this morning I said fall session. In my mind, a session includes legislation and these other pieces. I meant to say fall sitting. And so the intent is to get the legislature working, to get a speaker elected so that we can get going with the new elected representatives that British Columbians have sent to Victoria. We will not be introducing, and it's not my intention to introduce legislation in the fall, but it is my intent, if we can, to have a sitting, get the speaker elected, and get the legislature working for people, as well to get a cabinet selected and sworn in so that we can start working and delivering for British Columbians right away, because I know that's what they want us to do.
And now, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, it's been 9-10 days since the election. What's been the process that you've been going through over that time as you waited for all the results to be in? I know you've been talking to the Greens, the Conservatives, but in terms of what you've been doing over the past 9-10 days, can you give us some clarity on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It involved a lot of time with the refresh button on my browser. There's no question about it. It was an anxious time and a time for reflection. The good news is that I have an amazing family that I got to spend some time with. So that was one thing that Elections BC delivered for us, was a little bit more time with the
All right, I've had enough of fucking corrupt David Eby. Let's take a look at the Alberta provincial government. Or no, this is Alberta announces federal court challenge to carbon tax. So yes, this is the Alberta government. But I'm kind of curious to see what's going on here. So let's take a look. All right, let's get to when
carbon tax, alongside Minister of Justice Mickey Amery, Minister of Environment and Protected Areas Rebecca Schultz, Minister of Finance Nate Horner, Minister of Energy and Minerals Brian Jean, and Minister of Affordability and Utilities Nathan Neudorf. It's the end of October, and here in Alberta, the nights are below zero. There's snow up on the mountains, and parents are preparing to zip jackets over their kids' Halloween costumes. In just a few weeks, winter will be upon us, and Alberta winters are no joke. In this province, winter means long nights and freezing temperatures for weeks at a time. I'm sure we all remember the polar vortex that swept through our province this past January, when daily highs remained around minus 30 degrees and lows were around minus 40 degrees, with the wind chill dropping temperatures closer to minus 50. Those temperatures are devastatingly and dangerously cold. Home heating is not optional, and in Alberta, that means we rely on natural gas not just to keep us warm, but to keep us safe. Winter is coming again, and that means that Alberta families will again feel the sting of the federal carbon tax as they heat their homes
No,
with
Big
natural
Jamrel,
gas.
you're not
Here in Alberta,
blocked.
we don't
No,
tend
you
to
are
think
not.
that more taxes are the solution for anything, let alone a tax on all the things our citizens need to live and thrive in this cold climate. Given the cost of living challenges many households are facing, piling more financial burden onto Canadians is simply cruel and punitive. Until recently, the punishment from Ottawa was shared equally across the country. At the very least, that equal footing gave Canadians a unified front to push back on the federal government, a sense maybe that we were all in it together. But a year ago, almost to the day, Ottawa announced it was exempting heating oil from the federal carbon tax for 3 years. Now, that's great for the people of Atlantic Canada and Quebec, who have a higher proportion of their citizens who use heating oil. But let's be clear, most Albertans don't resent them for it either. Unfortunately, this exemption applies to practically no one outside of Eastern Canada. Added to that, the carbon tax on natural gas is more than triple the cost of natural gas itself. The carbon tax rate is about 4 cents a gigajoule, and gas is selling for $1.25 a gigajoule. Now, we can debate why Ottawa made this decision. We may even have a few theories, but whatever their reasons, the outcome is blatantly unfair for people in Alberta and other parts of Canada who use natural gas and other fuels to stay warm in the winter. From where we're sitting, it looks an awful lot like one more attempt to divide our country, to reward one region and punish another. And we're not going to sit back and let this unfair carve-out disadvantage Albertans for another winter. And so I'm pleased to announce that this morning, Alberta filed an application for a judicial review of the exemption in the federal court. We're asking the court to declare the exemption both unconstitutional and unlawful. We hope that this will force Ottawa to recognize the burden the carbon tax places on Canadians and eliminate the tax altogether. Albertans know we've got their backs on this. Our government has been fighting the federal carbon tax since 2019. We even took it to the Supreme Court of Canada in 2021. It was wrong when it was made into law, and it's wrong now. The federal carbon tax has always been unfair, but the selective way it's being applied now is also unconstitutional. And the impacts on Albertans will only get worse as the costs continue to increase. According to their own communications, the exemption was intended to lower energy bills for people who use heating oil. They're saying, in effect, that some Canadians deserve lower energy bills, but not all. They're also more or less admitting that the federal carbon tax raises costs for households, which confirms what we've been saying about it all along. The carbon tax is driving up the cost of everything. Let's take an example from our education system. Since the carbon tax was first implemented, Alberta's school authorities have paid more than $49 million to the federal government without receiving any rebate. By the 2030-2031 school year, we are projecting that they'll pay more than $60 million per year. There's a lot our school authorities could do with that money. They, for instance, could hire 495 teachers with what they'll be sending to Ottawa in 2030. In our healthcare system, we could hire nearly 1,000 nurses by 2030, critical frontline workers, instead of sending that money to Ottawa. Or consider the cost to municipalities. In 2023 alone, the City of Calgary could have hired an additional 112 police officers or firefighters for the amount that they sent to Ottawa for the carbon tax. Or consider the savings in a time when Canadians are coping with levels of inflation that we haven't seen in decades. The carbon tax is adding to inflation. In fact, according to the Bank of Canada, the federal carbon tax increases inflation by 0.15% per year, year over year. But we also know that the impact that taxes have on inflation, because when we paused the collection of our 13-cent per litre provincial fuel tax...
Yeah, if I had to guess, YouTube probably has its own censorship or chat censor or however it works. I don't know.
In 2030, the carbon tax on fuel will reach 39.6 cents per litre. According to the Canadian Energy Centre, the carbon tax will account for 24% of annual fuel costs. Imagine the savings to Canadians.
They censor you all the time. I get a lot of comments that get censored, like a lot of, not even like really bad comments either, but YouTube just, like, they censor everything.
For Eastern Canada blows a big hole in their justification for the carbon tax.
Well, they don't censor everything, but they censor quite a bit. They censor more than you'd think.
Counter to Ottawa's own carbon tax legislation, Our end goal is the same as a growing number of Canadians from across the country to get rid of the retail carbon tax. If Ottawa won't axe this heartless tax altogether, they can at least play fair when imposing it on Canadians. And that's what we'll be heading back to court to achieve. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Minister Mickey Amery to share more.
Well, thank you very much.
An internet censorship officer. Yeah, that's pathetic. That's like a Discord moderator. That's like, I don't know if you guys are, how in tune you are with gaming and stuff like that, but years ago there was this organization that was created that was gonna go around stopping bullying, people getting bullied in video games, and that was a total fucking disaster and a joke. So having an internet censorship officer would be like the exact same thing.
Those who use home heating oil, which is more emissions intensive than most other heating fuels, receive an economic benefit that is not provided to those who heat their homes in different ways. Unlawful, because the federal government's actions are also inconsistent with their stated purpose for enacting the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act in the first place. The purpose of this legislation was supposedly to set a minimum national standard for carbon pricing to meet emissions targets under the Paris Agreement. This legislation does not give the federal government the authority to make special exemptions for certain regions of our country. Inconsistently applying federal law to score political points is not something that we should ignore. On a number of fronts, we continue to encourage the federal government to stay within their jurisdiction. A cooperative relationship where Alberta is consulted on matters that concern us, and a relationship where provincial jurisdiction is respected would of course be what is the ideal scenario. In the absence of that, however, we need to assert our jurisdiction and protect the rights of Albertans through the courts. Through this application for judicial review, we're asking the federal court to declare the heating oil exemption unconstitutional and unlawful. Of course, the federal government needs to completely remove the carbon tax. However, until they do, the carbon tax needs to be fairly and consistently applied across the country. The federal government can't ignore their own laws or the Constitution for political gain. Thank you very much.
Great.
If you're not allowed to say that on other channels, I would assume that they probably have those keywords banned then, if I had to guess. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to say that on other channels. Unless you're posting a link to that platform, then yeah, you probably get banned for it.
But it sounds like this judicial application applies only to the exemption. Can you explain kind of why you went that?
Yeah, most certainly. When the federal government announced the heating exemption for heating oil and not for other areas of of the country that predominantly use different types of heating to heat their homes, the idea was that they created a distinct class of people, of beneficiaries that were exempt from the carbon tax, which we think is unconstitutional. It's inappropriate to grant exemptions to one region of the country while unfairly treating others in other regions of the country differently. Here in Alberta, we use natural gas, but that does not fall within the exemptions, and predominantly a number of other provinces use it as well. In the case of this exemption, it does not apply or impact Alberta in any significant way, and we think that's unconstitutional and quite frankly unfair.
And maybe more of a question for the Premier, but David Eby was re-elected, Scott Moe was re-elected. Have you had any discussions with them about joining in this fight?
I've sent text to both Premier Eby as well as Premier Moe congratulating them on returning to office. I told Premier Eby I'm looking forward to working with him collaboratively on some of the energy files that we've been talking about together, building out the hydrogen economy, exporting ammonia, getting more export capacity for LNG. And I spoke with Premier Moe about potentially considering joining this case. So we'll see what I mean, he's already demonstrated that he believes that the federal government is treating his province unfairly. He acted in a bit of a different way than we did, and I hope that he's able to join this case as soon as he gets his cabinet sworn in.
Shaylin.
Yeah, just wondering what the motivation for why making this announcement now. The exemption on home heating oil has been in place for a year, I believe.
Well, it takes a little bit of time for us to get our legal arguments developed. It's a timing thing. It's the work that needs to happen internally with the Justice Department. The Justice team that is leading this is phenomenal. It is being handled in-house within our department, and we just needed the time to develop our legal arguments and prepare for the legal challenge.
I guess some might say if you're standing up for Albertans, did it take a year to launch that legal argument, especially since you have launched several legal cases against the federal government stepping out of its jurisdiction before?
Most certainly, but we take the time to get this right. We've been tremendously successful in a number of different areas in the past year, and even before that as well. In a number of different areas, as you recall, the Emergencies Act was deemed to be unconstitutional. We know that the plastics ban was struck down by the courts as well. C-69, most recently by the Supreme Court of Canada, was deemed largely unconstitutional as well. And so for those reasons, I think that we're well equipped and well prepared, but we will take the time to do it right and serve Albertans best.
Sorry, Premier,
This is the Bloc needs to pull through. They need to show that they aren't two-faced. They've said that they want to call an election, a non-confidence vote. They want it to happen. So do it. Actually, do it. Don't just sit there and wait for Trudeau to play the games and the Liberals to play the games. Actually do it.
this holiday for heating oil is not just aimed at Eastern Canada.
It is a lot to ask. It is a lot to ask for politicians just to do their job. My God, it's actually like a task and a half for them.
Country. Now you could say we don't use a lot here in Alberta, but it's not as if they're said only the Maritimes or Atlantic Canada gets a holiday. It's the entire country, except the provinces, I guess, that have their own carbon tax.
So less than 1% of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba use home heating oil. It's 1% in British Columbia. It's 2% in Ontario, 4% in Quebec, 7% in New Brunswick, 18% in Newfoundland and Labrador, 32% in Nova Scotia, 40% in Prince Edward Island. I think it's pretty clear that there are certain regions in the country that are disproportionately benefiting from this. The entire argument that the federal government made about why they needed to impose a federal retail carbon tax was to create fairness across the country. This clearly does not create fairness, and it in fact exempts one of the highest emitting fuels. So they've undermined their entire argument. And if their argument is that it's an affordability issue, well, it's an affordability issue for us too. So we think that they've opened themselves up to a challenge on it.
Speaking of money and affordability, a different topic, but related to money. I've heard that during your recent caucus retreat that MLAs were told we could be heading towards a deficit in Alberta. Is that true?
Well, look, it's a serious problem. My finance minister warned of that when we launched our budget this year, that we need $74 oil to average throughout the year in order to run a $300 million surplus. If you look at the prices, they went down below $67 yesterday, and so we're watching that very closely. But when you look at some of the projections coming in from the different forecasters, they're projecting potentially that oil will come down to $65 in future years. So we want to be.
And that's why yesterday the CBC they voted to cut jobs. They passed it yesterday. Now it's a matter of when it gets implemented, if it ever gets implemented, and how many jobs they actually cut, who they cut from the CBC. It's probably going to be a bunch of nobodies and low-tier workers that realistically won't impact too much, if I had to guess. Like, when they say job cuts, I don't think they're going to be cutting the big boys out. I don't think that's going to happen.
Look at the price of oil, we look at the forecasts, but everything the Premier said is correct. It'll be a sincere challenge if there isn't an uplift in the overall.
They did. They gave themselves a huge bonus.
Growth pressures that we're seeing on the spending side. So too early to say, but we're watching it every day, and it will be a challenge regardless.
Great, thanks. Jonathan?
Hi, Jonathan Bradley, Western Standard. So you spoke about filing the application to the Federal Court of Canada against the home heating oil exemption. What will be your legal strategy to win the case?
Well, I think it's to identify that there are two key deficiencies here. Number one, that the case is unlawful, as I mentioned earlier, and the fact that it's unconstitutional. It creates a distinction. It divides this country.
Pierre, at one of his rallies, said that he was going to completely demolish the CBC and build new houses there. So I don't know how much of a joke that truly was, but if he actually does that, that would be very interesting.
Know that we have our theories about why that is, but certainly we think that it's unconstitutional and it's unlawful. It doesn't comply with the agreements that Canada has entered into. It creates distinctions and a division in this country, and I think that's where our strategy will lie.
Okay.
I hope he wasn't joking. I really hope he wasn't, Silent Night.
You mentioned it yourself. It was 1%. Pardon?
Less than 1%.
Less than 1%. So what's stopping the Alberta government from trying to shift towards having more people use home heating oil?
I mean, maybe I'll take a quick stab at this and I'll let the Premier articulate on it, but we have an abundance.
This is your first sit down, I think, since all this happened. You're not resigning. You're staying on as Liberal
I had a
leader?
press conference yesterday,
Yes.
I am determined to lead this party into the next election because we need to put all our tools together, and I am actually really excited about this fight. I think the opportunity to allow Canadians to make the best possible choice for the future is what we all get into politics for, to make a difference, to pitch an argument, and to connect with Canadians in a way that gives them optimism and a realistic plan for the future. That's what we're in the business of, and that's what I'm excited about.
Absolutely. This is your first sit down.
Na 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 na. Hey hey. Goodbye.
So natural gas in this province.
Fuck
is
you,
clean
Trudeau.
energy.
Get
It's
out of here,
available,
buddy.
Widely all across this province, and indeed, I think it's far better to use more conscience than home heating oil would.
He actually has confidence, thinking that. To be honest, it's actually kind of scary that he has confidence going into this because of the lack of self-awareness. He's so out of touch. It's actually kind of scary when you really think about it. He has confidence that he is going to be elected again.
I'll leave it at that and let the Premier articulate if you wish.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, Emmanuel.
Yeah, I want to understand your legal argument because the Constitution doesn't say that the federal government can't do a policy for a part of the country and not for another part of the country.
Well, look, at the end, here, let me just...
All right, so this is happening right now.
Sadly, that is not how things are right now. People are feeling really squeezed. Squeezed when they try to buy their groceries, can't find a place to call home. And healthcare more and more is causing you to pay out of pocket, or it's just simply you have to wait forever to get it. And the biggest threat to our vision for a better future are conservative cuts. And now the Bloc wants to help King Cut himself, Pierre Poilievre, cut the things that you need. Cut your pensions, cut healthcare, cut the dental care program.
Is he going to cut your pension, Jagmeet?
They want to cut it. They want to cut pharmacare.
Oh my God,
we
bro.
want
I can't
free birth
with
control
this guy.
across this country. So I will not let Pierre Poilievre, the King Cut, or the Bloc call the shots. I don't want a Liberal government. I don't want Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister. There will be an election, and when that election comes, people will have an important choice. And so folks out there,
Yeah, I typically don't listen to him either. The only reason this is on is because it's live right now, waiting for question period to start in roughly 7 minutes, guys. If you are new here, hit that like button, hit that sub button. Let's get back into it.
we are fighting to make sure you get the help and relief you need. We want to give hope to people. We want relief for people. We've got your back. I'll do that in French, and then I'll look forward to your questions. Donc, notre vision pour notre pays, notre vision, c'est une vision où tout le monde peut trouver un bon emploi. Un emploi qui vous permet de trouver du logement. Un emploi qui vous permet d'avoir un frigo plein de nourriture. Mais malheureusement, ce n'est pas la situation.
If Jagmeet loses his own riding, I think the NDP is truly done. They are how much in debt? Like millions, it was told they were in debt by. Jagmeet is not a good leader, not even good enough or fit enough for a party at that at the very minimum, like he's not fit for that. I don't see the NDP having much of a future in the next couple of years, to be honest. I mean, if they keep this up, I don't know. I don't know.
Donc, je ne vais pas laisser le...
Still talking in French. Still going on in French. They get in because anyone can vote in primaries, which I never knew. Who'd make that law? Poor jacket choice. We're gonna make fun of Jagmeet's fashion decisions.
En train de perdre l'espoir.
Still in French. He lived the block from us, and I often talked to him on Saturday at the farmer's market. He was a great NDPer.
If they don't want to go to an election, do you want anything in exchange for your support for the Liberals?
Well, we made it really clear what we're focused on. We're seeing people right now that are telling us it is impossible to afford groceries and all their bills. They can't find housing that's affordable. And they're worried about our healthcare system becoming more and more privatized, where you got to spend money on your credit card to get care. That's wrong. So we're focused on making sure we solve these problems. So we'll look at any bill that comes forward, any motion that comes forward, and if it's going to help people with these difficult times, we'll look at that.
Does that...
Vous dites que vous ne laisserez pas les conservateurs et...
I think he's got a watch on right now, whether it's a Rolex or not, I don't know. But I did see on this arm here, when he was waving his hands around.
Et on est dans des temps difficiles maintenant.
Vous appuyez une motion de défiance conservatrice.
On est dans des temps difficiles maintenant, et je parle avec les gens tout le temps. Ils me disent que je ne peux pas trouver du logement abordable. Je ne peux pas faire l'épicerie parce que c'est trop cher. Donc ça, c'est ma priorité. Et non, on ne va pas laisser les conservateurs et
les oui. Does not cost you money unless you want a fast appointment. It's a two-tier model, and the union is tripping. The more these MPs speak, the less confidence I truly have. You want my honest opinion right now? Especially if today doesn't go to a vote of non-confidence and the Bloc is just quite obviously continuing to play theatrics. I will have no hope after today, or very little at this point. Holy shite.
We know people are hurting right now. People are struggling right now. They're having a hard time affording their groceries. They're having a hard time affording a place to call home. And seniors are just getting help with their teeth.
Guy.
I'm not going to let Pierre Poilievre, the king, cut himself, and the Bloc decide when to cut these things that people need. I'm not going to let them cut the things that people need. So no, I'm not going to play their games.
So, to end the privilege debate.
That's it, huh? That's all we're getting from that? Well, I guess question period is starting in roughly 3 minutes. It's all just a show for the plebs. Oh man, the Bloc isn't playing. I fucking hope so. Let the circus begin. The doors are opening. Yup. Ladies and gentlemen, grab your popcorn, grab your drinks. Today might actually be a wild question period, depending on if the Bloc has the balls they say they do. Imagine being a police officer, getting paid to be a police officer, and you're just the doorman. Oh, what is going on here? Oh, okay. It totally is all just theatrics. What is this? What is going on here? Oh my god, man. Yeah, just zoom in directly to her face all the way, because that's what we want to see. That's what we want to see, yeah. Jagmeet up close and personal.
Pourquoi le gouvernement canadien n'a pas assez fait dans ses relations avec l'Inde et pour stopper les ingérences indiennes? Qu'est-ce qui doit être encore fait par les autorités canadiennes pour stopper les ingérences indiennes?
Ce qu'on a vu, c'est des allégations tellement sévères contre l'Inde. Pour résumer un peu, on a un gouvernement étranger qui a directé, qui a donné des...
Okay, can somebody enlighten me on what the actual hell just happened? I'm skipping back. I'm going back. Okay, I didn't mean to go back to that, but what just happened here? What did we just witness? Oh, that's brutal.
J'exige le gouvernement fédéral de prendre au sérieux les allégations et cette ingérence. Aussi, on a des nouvelles qu'il y avait des autres ingérences perpétuées par le gouvernement de la Chine et encore, on prend au sérieux toute cette ingérence. Donc, on exige encore le gouvernement de faire le travail nécessaire, de protéger les Canadiens, protéger nos institutions et de protéger les Canadiens.
Craignez-vous de payer le coût politique de continuer à soutenir les libéraux?
Je m'occupe des situations des gens. Je parle avec les gens tout le temps et ils me disent que c'est vraiment difficile à ce moment avec la hausse les hausses des coûts des épiceries, des coûts de logement, les coûts dans la vie des gens, le coût de la vie augmente et c'est difficile. Donc, je vais analyser chaque vote, chaque motion. Les libéraux ne peuvent pas prendre pour acquis notre appui.
The scepter of power. Holy shit. That's some Indiana Jones stuff right there.
Parce que c'est quelque chose qui est dans les intérêts des gens.
Forward, because of the state of the House right now in this filibuster, will you vote with the Liberals to end this filibuster before the end of the session so that all the parties can have their opposition day?
Now, there's a filibuster going on. At the same time, when people are saying, I can't find a home that I can afford, I can't afford my groceries, and the Conservatives are in here just playing games, blocking up the House, blocking up everything. But the Liberals are also to blame too. At a time when people are hurting, the Liberals just need to provide transparency and we can move forward. So both the Liberals and the Conservatives are playing games in the House. We need accountability from the Liberals, and the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre have to stop.
Anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, through patriot love, in all of us command, car ton bras sait porter l'épée, il sait porter la croix, ton histoire est une épopée.
Okay, last time I covered this and the national anthem played, YouTube hit me with a copyright strike for "We Will Rock You." Or no, it was "Rocking in the Free World." I don't understand how they thought those two sounded anything alike, but that's what happened.
Canada, we stand on guard for Let the doors be open. Que l'on ouvre.
Let the doors be open, Big Bad Greg says. Oh boy.
Thank you, sir. Statement by members. Déclaration de député, l'honorable député de...
The honourable member for Milton.
Yeah, I was so confused. It was weird.
An 11-time world champion, a black belt in 7 martial arts disciplines, a champion of Milton's martial arts community, an inaugural inductee of our local Milton Sports Hall of Fame, a dedicated sensei, a beloved father and husband, and a true master of his craft, Scott passed away peacefully on October 28th, surrounded by his family, including his wife, Tammy. Back in 1993, Scott opened his dojo in Milton, and for decades since, they've not only taught martial arts, but also instilled values of respect, discipline, and perseverance in countless students. His larger-than-life presence inspired so many, and he's well known for his infectious enthusiasm and commitment to the well-being of others. His legacy will live on in the hearts and minds of those he worked with, both in the dojo and out in the community. And as we remember Scott today, let us celebrate his love of Milton, his extraordinary dedication to our community, and the profound impact he had on so many people's lives. He will be dearly missed, but his influence will endure. Scott, we'll always give it 110% for you, my friend.
The honourable member from Spadina, Fort York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 years ago, when I raised concerns about the government's failed drug strategy, I was slammed for giving a voice to Canadians
Let's
living
go,
with the
Kevin.
consequences of their failure. This is what happens when you speak truth to the regressive left. So intent are they on protecting their policies that sound good but are harmful in practice, they vilify anyone challenging their radical ideology. This includes parents concerned about their children's safety, seniors tired of thefts and break-ins, business owners fed up with staff being assaulted. Mr. Speaker, we were called NIMBYs, or not in my backyards, when the truth is our yards are full. They're full of crime, they're full of needles, and they're full of drugs. But we persevered in our fight for safer communities, and the Ontario government acted to protect children by closing drug sites within 200 meters of schools and daycares. Ontario's taken the first step. It's time for this government to finish the job and to do so now, because we can all read the polls. We know they're going to lose the next election, so leave with some dignity. Do the right thing, listen to experts, and reform safe supply before even more Canadians are hurt. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear. Well done.
The honourable member from Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, 1 in 15 Canadians will be diagnosed with lung cancer. It affects thousands of Canadian families, including my own. It's the most commonly diagnosed cancer in Canada, and one of
Maybe because Canadians, we smoke a lot of fucking cigarettes. Holy shit.
lung cancer kills more Canadians than prostate cancer, breast cancer, and colon cancer combined. It's usually undetectable until its final stages. Stigma remains because of the association between lung cancer and smoking, which may explain discrepancies in research and treatment funding compared to other cancers. While smoking is a factor in
Broken into 3 times this month? Holy shit.
You can get lung cancer. I ask Canadians to treat all cancer patients with compassion and with best hopes for new, life-prolonging therapies to add years of survival for our loved ones.
Order, please.
The honourable member from Kitchener South, Hespeler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We recently celebrated National Persons Day when we remember the famous 5 prominent Canadian suffragettes who advocated for the rights of women and children during the 1880s and 90s. Their efforts culminated with the landmark case of Edwards versus Canada on October 18, 1929, when the eligibility of women to sit in the Senate chambers here in Canada was recognized. Emily Murphy, Henrietta Edwards, Nellie McClung, Louise McKinney, and Irene Parlby have been immortalized in marble outside the current Senate chambers for us to see daily. I am honored to rise in this chamber today alongside many women I am proud to call colleagues as we recognize this special day and the women who came before us on this journey.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, today I'd like to pay tribute to Mr. François Gervais, a member of the Oka High School staff, who recently opted for a phased retirement after a busy career. For almost 40 years, Mr. Gervais left his mark on hundreds of young people. Some of them still talk today about his initiatives, such as setting up a fair trade store, creating a student environmental committee, creating a humanitarian action committee, notably after the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, and creating a bridge with the Kanastaki School to forge ties between students and the community, and many other things, Mr. Speaker. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Gervais in May of 2023 when he accompanied a group of students here on the Hill to raise awareness about feminicide. I remember him as a top-notch man driven by a deep desire to awaken young people to the challenges of tomorrow. On behalf of all of my fellow citizens, thank you, Mr. Gervais, for your unrelenting faith in our beautiful youth, our future. Have a wonderful, progressive retirement. Thank you.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Argenteuil-La Petite Nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UPA Outaouais Laurentide Federation is celebrating its 60th anniversary this year, and I'd like to highlight the important work it has accomplished for farmers in the Laurentians and the Outaouais, including in my riding. The UPA Outaouais Laurentide represents 2,259 farms and their 3,410 producers. They are responsible for nearly 10% of all farm businesses in Quebec. And I'd like to thank them, led by President Stéphane Allary, a dairy and field crop producer in Luxville, to have celebrated their 60th anniversary in my riding. And the banquet will be held this evening. So it's with great pleasure and pride that I welcome them to my riding. Happy 60th anniversary and long live UPA Outaouais Laurentide.
Member from Durham. Merci.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the police officers who serve our communities for upholding the law and protecting our families. For all of this, you deserve our gratitude.
Policing is an honorable profession. Every day, officers put their own safety at risk to keep our country safe. My community of Durham is home to police who work in Durham Region, Toronto, York Region, Peterborough, and Kawartha Lakes Police Services, as well as the RCMP. We thank you. I encourage all young Canadians with a heart for public service to consider a career in policing, where some of the best and brightest in our country protect and serve. Thank you. The Honourable Member from Mississauga-Malton.
Mr. Speaker, I am thrilled to share that an all-girls team from Darcel Avenue Senior Public School located in Malton has won first place at the World Robot Olympiad in Italy.
Hear, hear.
Known as the Forest Guardians, Jutuk, Melanie, Chitra, and Rabunya created the BlazeBot, designed to sense wildfires in their early stages and alert local fire stations before it's too late. Under the coaching of their French immersion teacher, Priya Parekh, and the support of their librarian, Lydia Marcelli, the fantastic Forest Guardians made history as the first ever Canadian team to take top spot at this competition.
Hear, hear.
Speaker, when I look at their faces, I know with deep conviction that their futures will help determine no less than the destiny that this nation will fulfill. It's clear to me that the future of Mississauga-Malton is bright and promising, and I invite all parliamentarians in joining me to congratulate them and celebrate their significant achievement. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Northwest Territories.
Mr. Speaker, in even our smallest communities in the Northwest Territories, the drug trade and accompanying addiction issues have reached a boiling point. Our community members, many dealing with trauma, are facing predatory dealers who sell to anyone to ensure they become repeat customers. It doesn't matter if you live in a city, town, village, hamlet, or charter community. We're watching our communities all sizes as they struggle with ensuring they are safe and healthy places to live. The Government of Canada must continue to work with the Government of Northwest Territories, community and Indigenous governments to create and strengthen tools to disrupt and combat drug trade and provide support and aftercare options that work for Northerners. To protect our residents at risk, we need all levels of government at the table to end the drug crisis that is harming our families and our communities. Must it show, Mr. Speaker?
Here, here. The Honourable Member from Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On September 27th, my father, Jason Felix Couric, unexpectedly and suddenly passed away at age 54. My dad was a good man. He chose life, he always worked hard, and gave generously even when he didn't have much to give. He loved farming, a work that creates a bond that few will understand. He built deep friendships from the field to Parliament Hill. He lived with humility and grace, showing us that faith in Jesus is shown by love and care. But while kind, he also never backed down. On the hockey ice or elsewhere, he stood for what was right and the values that built this country. He was a devoted husband to Mom for 35 years. He was a loving father, and he adopted his kids-in-law like his own, and he was a seriously proud papa. Our family and community lost a truly good man. Thank you to everyone for the support during these difficult weeks, both in consort and here. But in the midst of our grief, my hope is that everyone can remember my dad, Jay, by living with the strength, generosity, and faith that he showed us. I love you, Dad, and until we meet again.
The honourable member from Surrey Newton. Mr. Speaker, Canadians across this country are deeply concerned by the Conservative Party's lack of attention to India's...
I'm gonna be real. I don't, I guess statements by members, they can just say whatever the hell they want, or they can bring up whatever they please. Like, that was really fucking sad. Holy shit. Like, that was unexpected.
...of the Government of India and the security of Canadians. At this critical time, not a single question has been raised in this House by the opposition leader regarding the safety of Canadians. He had failed to hold a press conference and delegated a statement through his MPs reflecting disturbing level of disengagement. He remains without security clearance, hindering his ability to gain a complete understanding of national security issues. Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve better.
Yes, they do.
The honourable member from Peterborough, Kawartha.
After 9 years, this Liberal NDP government is not worth the cost of housing. The housing minister has allocated $8 billion of taxpayer money to housing programs.
Does Trudeau show up today? You guys think he shows up today? He was here yesterday. I don't know.
Encampment, rent, and head.
Might be on another multi-million-dollar vacation.
Midland Senior lives in a shed. Common sense Conservatives have a plan. We will cut the GST on all new builds under $1 million. This will save Canadians $40,000 on homes of $800,000 value. Did you know in Ontario, government taxes account for 30% of housing prices? Wow. Enough with taxing people into poverty and hopelessness. Our compassionate common sense plan will stop the Liberals from forcing people to put up tents as housing. We will axe the tax and we will start building the homes.
The honourable member from Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
After 9 years of the NDP Liberals, they are not worth the cost of their failed housing programs that has only doubled the cost of rent, mortgage, and down payments.
He's sharing the tub. You're damn right he probably is.
Say it's only going to get worse in the years to come. That's why the response to our bold, common sense Conservative plan to axe the GST on new homes sold was so well received this week. Leuna says it's good policy. The Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness says this is smart. The Greater Ottawa Home Builders and Build GTA both say that our tax cut instantly makes a significant improvement in housing affordability. It's because on an $800,000 new house, it will save home buyers $40,000 plus $2,200 a year in mortgage payments, and it's going to spark 30,000 extra new homes in this country each year. Mr. Speaker, instead of funding photo ops, more bureaucracy, and less home building, it's time to bring home more homes for Canadians.
The honourable member from Surrey Centre.
Speaker, yesterday the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security heard from top national security and law enforcement officials on the extent of the Indian government's interference in Canada, including serious criminal activities, extortion, and the murders of Canadian citizens. Canadians from across the country are shaken and scared of this blatant attack on our democracy and on their safety. Despite their concerning evidence, Canadians still have not heard directly from the leader of the Conservative Party on this issue. His silence has been noted in this House, and now it is being noticed in committees. Canadian citizens have died at the hands of a foreign government. What will it take for the leader of the Conservative Party to give this issue the seriousness that it deserves?
Yes, absolutely.
The honourable member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Mr. Speaker, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and early screening can catch harder to find cancers like triple-negative breast cancer, or TNBC, which is more frequently diagnosed in patients under 50. Those diagnosed with TNBC represent anywhere from 10 to 20% of the overall breast cancer population, and it is more likely to affect Black and Hispanic women. Most people have never heard of TNBC, and some Canadians are not even aware that there are different types of breast cancer. We need to greatly improve awareness of triple-negative breast cancer and all breast cancers and ensure that there is more equitable access to screening and treatments. More education, earlier screening, and earlier detection means greater chance of survival. In closing, I recognize friends and breast cancer survivors from Port Moody, Coquitlam, Unstoppable Captain Jen Dawkins, my wonderful neighbor, Hila Shavit, and retired Captain Paula Fado.
Order, please. The honourable member for, Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. I'd like to pay tribute to an illustrious member of this House, elected at the age of 28 in Verchères during the first Bloc election in 1993. Re-elected again until he made the leap to the National Assembly of Quebec in 2005, where he served as Minister of Public Security from 2012 to 2014. After a brief departure from politics in 2018, he returned to his first love under the Bloc banner in the 2019 election. You've probably gathered who I'm talking about, the current member for Montarville. Known for his inexhaustible energy, hard work, and total devotion to his constituents, he has always been held in high esteem by his colleagues. He took everyone by surprise when he announced that he would not seek re-election in the next election. We will no doubt miss him on the Hill, but we're delighted to know that he'll remain a proud supporter of the Quebec independence cause. Stéphane, congratulations on your 30th birthday, and thank you for all you've done.
What the hell is going on?
Celebrating his 30 years of public service. Stéphane Bergeron.
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
Before I continue to the next member, I'd like to remind members, if they could, if they have cellular telephones, we heard it ringing during the...
Cellular telephones? Greg, are you like from the 1800s? Who the hell says cellular telephones?
A member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
This guy's from the Stone Age.
This Prime Minister in power, that's the leader of the NDP and stuntman who scammed voters right before a by-election. Remember the leader of the NDP's big stunt when he told Canadians he ripped up his coalition deal with the Liberals? In fact, the leader of the NDP said, quote, "The Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people," end quote. But the NDP leader is all talk and is...
Yeah, get the terminology right or don't say it at all, damn it.
voted for the carbon tax 24 times, the same one that sends Canadians to food banks in record numbers with over 2 million visits in a single month. The NDP leader supports the inflationary deficits, voting to fund corruption like this Prime Minister's $60 million Arrive scam. Every day that this Prime Minister remains in power is because of the leader of the NDP. It's time for a carbon tax election so Canadians can fire this costly and corrupt NDP Liberal government.
The honourable member from Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, recently I spoke in this House about the growth of radical far-right movements. They've organized disinformation campaigns, impacted how some people and politicians treat others, and have led to some politicians not acting in the best interests of Canadians. As our Prime Minister recently said, we've seen that anti-vax messages during the convoy, during the pandemic, were amplified by Russian propaganda, especially in the media of the right, and that this media began spreading pro-Putin propaganda, and that Russia Today is currently funding bloggers and other YouTube personalities of the right, such as Tucker Carlson, in order to amplify messages that are destabilizing democracy. What this tells us is that some of these far-right movements and opinion leaders are not only harming Canada, but they're doing so at the bidding of Vladimir Putin. Some of these far-right movements are agents of foreign influence. So I wonder why the leader of the opposition will not get his security clearance and not take this seriously. I urge us all to take the actions we need to stop the influence of these radical far-right movements, because our security, our economy, and our freedom depend on it.
Oral questions, questions orales.
Question period.
Of the official opposition. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, Canada made a promise to everyone. It's very simple. Work hard, get a big paycheck, and buy food and affordable housing in safe communities, no matter where you're from. But this Canadian promise, like everything else, is broken after 9 years of this Prime Minister who's doubled the cost of housing. This week, I proposed eliminating the GST on the purchase of a new home. Everyone is in agreement it's going to reduce the cost of a new home. Will the Prime Minister accept my common sense idea?
Trudeau showed up! Whoa!
Prime Minister. The problem, Mr. Speaker, the fundamental problem for the opposition leader is that all the challenges he sees, he's got one solution for them: cutting services, programs, and investments for Canadians. Even when he tries to put forward solutions for housing, he wants to cut. He cuts thousands, millions, billions of dollars in building more housing. He's calling for a cut of $9 billion that we're sending to the government of Quebec to accelerate housing starts across Quebec. We need investments to build new homes, not cuts and austerity. That's all that the Conservative Party is offering us. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. It's not surprising that the Prime Minister is against cutting GST on housing because he doubled the cost. He did it by breaking the immigration system, by printing $750 billion in inflationary funding, by funding bureaucracies that prevent construction, and by putting new taxes on housing. He's trying to build more bureaucracy in Ottawa, bureaucracy that doesn't lead to any new housing.
Yeah, they do have to, well, they don't have to, but I would assume that there's probably some amount of French that probably has to be spoken. But if they ask a question in French, it needs to be answered in French. And it's translated in English anyway, which I don't know why they even bother with French at that point.
Hundreds of millions of dollars for Quebec to cut investments in housing across the country. That's not what Canadians need. We are investing in housing. We are investing to build more opportunities across the country for people, and all he's offering is billions of dollars in cuts in services and programs and services that Canadians need. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Canada makes everyone a promise. It's a very simple deal. You work hard, you get decent food, and a good home in a safe neighborhood. Doesn't matter where you come from, you work hard, that's what you get. But that promise, like everything else, is broken after 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister. He's doubled housing costs. That's why I came forward with a now widely celebrated idea to axe the GST sales tax on new homes, saving up to $50,000 on the cost of a new home. Will he accept my common sense plan to axe the tax and build the homes?
I thought if it was asked in French, that had to be answered in French or English or however, but I don't know.
Is offering at a time where Canadians need support is cuts. He's proposing to cut billions of dollars of investments in housing across the country to increase densification, to cut red tape, to accelerate the construction of homes and apartments that Canadians need. He's offering cuts. He's offering austerity. He's saying everything is broken, and then he's thinking that cuts to services and programs and investments is what's going to help Canadians. That's not responsible leadership, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He proposes to cut bureaucracy and taxes, Mr. Speaker. Let's axe the sales tax on new homes, saving up to $50,000 on a new home. That's a savings of almost $2,700 per year in lower mortgage payments. By contrast, the Prime Minister offers multi-billion-dollar housing bureaucracy in Ottawa that his own housing minister admits doesn't build homes. Wow. So why won't he listen to his own housing minister and accept my common sense plan to axe the tax and build the homes?
Yeah. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, one of the most fundamental responsibilities of any Canadian Prime Minister is the safety of Canadians. Unfortunately, the Leader of the Opposition has failed at his responsibility to keep his own MPs safe from foreign interference. So I have asked the security services to figure out a way to give some information to the Leader of the Opposition so that he can actually fulfill his responsibility of protecting Canadians, including those within his own caucus. It would be easier if he got a security clearance, but I've asked them to give him some information nonetheless.
Can I ask the Honourable Member from Selkirk-Interlaken-Eastmain, please, not to take the microphone. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I know that the Prime Minister has told his caucus he's not sleeping. He's pulling his hair out with stress because of his caucus revolting against him. Now he's spreading tin pot conspiracy theories rather than answering the question. 80% of Canadians now believe that home ownership is only for the very rich after he doubled the cost of housing in 9 years. I came forward with a common sense plan to axe the GST on new homes, saving up to $50,000 on a new home. Why won't he accept my plan to axe the tax and build the home?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
He just put forward a plan to cut billions of dollars of investment in housing across the country. But, Mr. Speaker, in regards to issues of national security, it is extraordinarily difficult to see a leader of the Conservative Party refuse to get the necessary security briefings that would allow him to protect his own MPs and indeed protect our Canadian democracy. So I have asked the security services to figure out a way to share some information, perhaps even some names, with the leader of the Conservative Party so that he can take action and protect his members.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. How to lose at Politics 101. 80% of voters are asking the Prime Minister to increase old age security for seniors aged 65 to 74. Every party here voted in favour of it, even his. Thanks to the Bloc Québécois, the Prime Minister had a unique opportunity to be fair to seniors, please 80% of people, and stay in power. He could have scored a triple, Mr. Speaker. Instead, he chose to abandon seniors, to say no to 80% of voters, and to buy himself an election. 0 for 3, Mr. Speaker. Does he understand now why nobody wants him around anymore? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Our government is investing in seniors. We increased the guaranteed income supplement by 10%. We are helping older seniors, those aged 75 and up, with an increase in old age security. And we delivered dental care Over 1 million seniors across the country have seen a major difference thanks to that program. Dental care, by the way, that the Bloc decided to vote against. I would suggest that if they're taking suggestions on how to be popular in politics, that they deliver dental care services to seniors who need it. Maybe that would be a good thing that they could do instead of being like the Conservatives and voting against it. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. The Prime Minister could have helped 1 million Quebec seniors with the help of the Bloc. Instead, he abandoned them to go back to his ex who kicked him out, the NDP. You know, he went back, his tail between his legs, to a party that's so disconnected from Quebec that its only Quebec MP is desperately looking for a way out and into the administration of the city of Montreal. I feel sorry for Montreal. The Prime Minister could have chosen 1 million Quebecers. Instead, he chose 25 MPs, 96% of whom are from outside of Quebec. Does he understand that we don't need a secret ballot to know that nobody in Quebec trusts him anymore?
Just absolutely cooked them. Oh, colleagues.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The Right Honourable
Mr.
Greg.
Speaker, we can understand that when the Bloc has the support of the Conservative Party, Quebecers are going to be very concerned. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that we are here to invest in seniors. We were there with dental care, where the Bloc and the Conservative Party voted against it. We were there to increase the guaranteed income supplement by 10% for the most vulnerable seniors. That's one of the very first things that we did as a government, and the Bloc and the Conservatives voted against it. We were there to increase old age security for seniors 75 and up because they have more costs, and the Bloc voted against that as well.
The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
Let's talk about women. In Alberta, Daniel Smith, the Premier, is privatizing healthcare and giving it to Covenant. Covenant refuses to give abortions. That is clearly a violation of the Canada Health Act. Does the Prime Minister agree? Yes or no?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are the government that has stood up for women's rights unequivocally across this country, including pulling
Trudeau almost said Mr. Government.
Abortion services and reproductive health wasn't being delivered. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we're moving forward with more ways to protect women's rights. Just yesterday, we presented a Ways and Means motion.
Is she still there? Is Mary still there?
Will have to disclose whether or not they're actually
like why is she still there? What is our government doing?
Whether they are going to leave women without support and without choices at an extremely delicate time.
That's right.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
It's her body, her choice, not her body, Conservative Party's choice.
The Conservatives have revealed a new plan for a cut. This time, they want to cut in the Affordable Housing Accelerator Fund. And now, the Bloc wants to support them. The Bloc had some power, but they weren't able to do anything to resolve the housing crisis in Quebec. People need affordable housing, not infighting. Will the Liberals finally wake up? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to follow up on the first part of the question from my honourable colleague on the fact that the Conservative Party continues to attack women's rights. Now, I certainly have questions about the Conservative MPs from Quebec within the Conservative Party of Canada who have sat on their hands while their colleagues attack women as rights, the anti-choice members of the Conservative Party. We are seeing women's rights under attack everywhere, and the Conservative Party is encouraging them with the MPs they've elected. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois and the leader of the Bloc Québécois has literally nothing, delivered nothing for Quebecers, nothing for seniors, nothing for farmers. But despite that, he voted almost 200 times to keep this Prime Minister in power. He voted for $500 million in inflationary bureaucratic spending $500 million in deficit spending. At the same time, Quebecers are suffering from the cost of housing, which has doubled. Will the Prime Minister accept to call an election so that Quebecers can support my plan to get rid of GST on new homes? Just before I recognize the Prime Minister, I would just like to ask all members, please, to put your phones on silence. It's good for the interpreters. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I said it in English, I'll repeat it in French. We know that one of the fundamental responsibilities of everyone in this House is to protect the safety, security, and well-being of Canadians. However, with his completely unexplainable decision to not get his security clearance, the Conservative leader is putting Canadians at risk, including members of his own party. That's why I have asked our security services to share as much information as possible with the Conservative leader so that he can better protect his MPs, despite the fact that
he just keeps repeating the same thing over and over again and not providing anything. Come on. This is ridiculous.
This Prime Minister doubled housing costs, doubled the debt, doubled gun crime, and now doubled food bank use, that the NDP would be pulling its support. After all, the leader said the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people, and yet, there he is, still in power. He doesn't even have the confidence of his own Liberal MPs, but he seems to still have the confidence of the sellout NDP leader. So, will the costly carbon tax coalition stand up in front of Canadians and let people vote in a carbon tax election for change in the future?
I ask members to be very judicious in their
colleagues,
choice of words
please
regarding
turn off
specific
your cell
members.
phones, please.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, watchers of Canadian politics will remember that
Mr.
last
Government?
year, the Conservative Party got up pretty much every time they could to talk about national security, to talk about it in a partisan way, but to talk about it every chance they could get. And now that we have offered the Leader of the Opposition a security clearance so that he can be fully informed on national security, all that they've been able to say is political attacks and asking questions of other parties. Why has the Leader of the Opposition chosen to not get a security clearance when the safety of his own MPs is in the balance?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it looks like the Prime Minister is worried about his personal political security as his MPs are revolting and trying to push him out of the job. And so he's desperately trying to change the channel on the questions that I've asked. Now, Mr. Speaker, I think that's unfair, though. Those MPs helped this Prime Minister double housing costs, double the debt, double gun crime, double food bank use. Why won't he turn around and look them in the eye and say they should stand up for their own record and his, face the music in a carbon tax election?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, no responsibility by the government is more important than keeping Canadians safe. That's why our security services...
That's why your government has allowed all of these things to happen to put us in the situation we are, where you keep repeating yourself about the opposition not having their security clearance while not providing any evidence or proof, or this list of names of MPs and senators that you had that just magically has disappeared now. We're not talking about that anymore. It's actually amazing how this guy got voted into power more than once. All he does is manipulate and lie. And they sit there and they back him.
He wants to release the name.
Like, they must truly be terrified of Trudeau. Like, the Liberal Party must be scared of him. Because if they truly wanted to leave or have him resign, they would step across to the other side. They would become independent. The Bloc would have fucking already called a vote of non-confidence. But here we are, playing games Watching Big Bad Greg lay the smackdown. Colleagues, please, order.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, now we're getting something. He's actually engaging on the issue.
Thank you for stopping by, Jennifer. Hopefully you have a good rest of your day or night. Thank you for stopping by.
That are putting their lives at risk to keep Canadians safe. There is a reason we do not disclose classified information in places where our adversaries are watching and paying attention. But we can release many names to him and much information to him if he only gets his security clearance. So he would be able to keep his own team members safe from foreign interference, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, Trudeau. You silly, silly man.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He won't release the names because he knows that he and his party are compromised. And he won't answer my question because right now, 24 of his MPs are rebelling against him. They're asking for a secret ballot to fire him, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, as I say, that is not fair. Every one of those MPs helped this Prime Minister create 1,400 homeless encampments in Ontario. Every one of them voted to quadruple the carbon tax. They can't just throw him out. He can't just run away. They need to face the music. Why won't we have a carbon tax election now?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
For well over a year in this House, just about every question from the Leader of the Opposition was about national security, was about foreign interference. And we called a commission of inquiry. We've offered security clearances to all leaders. And indeed, the leader of the Green Party, the NDP, and the Bloc have all done the responsible thing and gotten their security clearances and gotten top secret briefings from our security services. The leader of the Conservative Party chooses to play the pettiest form of politics instead of stepping up on his responsibilities as leader, protecting Canadians, protecting his MPs, protecting our institutions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, security and safety depends on housing. In Quebec, the cost of housing has doubled. In Montreal, the cost of rent has tripled after 9 years of this Prime Minister who's building bureaucracy, who's printing money, who's broken the immigration system, and who has applied taxes on corrupt businesses. And that's why I've proposed a common sense idea to cut the GST on housing. The Prime Minister says that he'd rather put money into bureaucracy. I want to cut taxes for those who are buying a home. Can we have an election on the question of eliminating the GST on housing? Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are extremely perplexed right now because we know very well that the Conservatives, apparently, according to themselves, are interested in law and order and crime and national security and defense. It's in everything that they put out in the elections. But when it comes time where there's a real threat to Canadians' safety and even to the safety...
Like right now, how there's fucking other countries interfering in our government and have been for years now? You mean that kind of security of Canadians, Trudeau? Oh my God. My brain is melting.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Every party here voted to protect supply management with C-282. Every party stood with farmers to call on the Senate to stop blocking this bill. Everyone is telling Senators Beam and Harder to get to work. It's time today for the Prime Minister to take his responsibilities seriously, to be responsible for our farmers. He appointed the senators who are blocking this bill, and it's his fault that we're stuck with them. Will he finally ask these two Royal Highnesses to pass Bill C-282 immediately? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have always been very clear that we will protect supply management. That's what we did against the Trump administration. That's what we will continue to do by making sure that we keep our promises to always protect supply management in any free trade negotiations that we undertake in the coming years. We are defending that right now, and we expect the Senate to pass this bill so that we can make sure that the future of supply management will always be protected for Canadians. We completely agree with the Bloc Québécois on this. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Well, nice words, Mr. Speaker, but not only did he appoint these senators, the senators that are blocking C-282, but one of the two of them is even a good buddy of his. Peter Harder brags about it on his Senate webpage. He says that the Prime Minister, when he was in the opposition, called him several times for advice and help. And then 6 months later, he got a Senate seat.
Yeah, you can put the name of the channel in, I don't care. I don't know if it'll allow links, though. I don't think the chat allows links, but if you just want to put the name in, yeah, I don't care.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we recognize the independence and the important work that the Senate does. The Senate studies bills, makes recommendations, and over the years, we've appointed exceptional senators who are doing responsible and diligent work in that place. At the same time, we always expect the senators to take into account the will and the decisions of this House. And the House voted unanimously to protect supply management, as we've always committed to do, protecting supply management in any trade agreement and free trade negotiations. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. 9 years after this Prime Minister promised to end chronic homelessness, it's gone up by 38%. But happily, the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness says that my Conservative plan to eliminate the GST on the purchase of a new home is, quote, intelligent. So if the Prime Minister is really interested in ending the housing crisis that he created, will he listen to the people who are trying to end homelessness and accept my common sense plan and eliminate the GST on new homes? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. To fight homelessness, I would recommend that the Conservative leader call his friends, the Conservative premiers of Saskatchewan and Ontario, to accept and tell them to accept the money that we're putting on the table to fight homelessness and end the encampments that are making people so vulnerable. But it's interesting, Mr. Speaker, to see to what extent the Conservative leader refuses to answer a very simple question. Why is he refusing to get his security clearance to protect our institutions, our democracy, and his own colleagues in the Conservative Party? The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And Builders Association stated that my common sense Conservative plan to axe the sales tax on new homes under $1 million is, and I quote, the most significant housing announcement made in the past 2 decades. Removing the GST shows leadership to cut crippling levels of taxation on new housing, puts money directly back in the pockets of Canadians while combating the housing crisis. Why won't the Prime Minister listen to the people who build homes so that we can reverse the crisis he caused? Why don't we axe the sales tax on new homes today?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
You know what shows leadership, Mr. Speaker? Taking seriously the safety of Canadians.
Oh, boy.
Mr. Speaker, the RCMP has
So what does that say about your leadership then, Trudeau?
The government of India was involved in the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil, in extortion, in violence, in drive-by shootings, in home invasions, and the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada refuses to get his security clearance so that he can keep Canadians safe, can even keep his fellow MPs safe. That's why I've asked our security services to find a way to share some information with him so maybe he can do at least a part of his job.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
We'd like to see him do any of his job after 9 years, Mr. Speaker, like reversing the housing price increase he caused. Let me quote. British Columbia's Victoria Residential Builders Association said, quote, reducing government costs, including GST, would have a significant impact on housing affordability. The Conservative leader's suggestion is welcome news and long overdue if the federal government wants to get serious about housing affordability for Canadians. This common sense plan will stimulate 30,000 new extra homes built every year. So will he accept my common sense plan to axe the tax and build the homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Conservatives, you always need to look at the fine print underneath the easy slogans. And the fine print on this one is cutting billions of dollars of investments in housing right across the country at a time where we need to be building more housing more quickly. Cuts are not the solution. But if he wants to take something seriously, perhaps he should take seriously the issue of national security, because he refuses, for inexplicable, political, childish, who knows what reasons, refuses to get his security clearance that will allow him to keep his own MPs safe, to keep Canadians safe, to keep our democracy and its institutions safe.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
After 9 years after promising he'd get rid of chronic homelessness, it's actually risen by 38%. Now there are 1,400 homeless encampments in Ontario. It's almost as bad as it is in NDP-governed British Columbia. But there is good news. The Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness heard about my common sense plan to axe the GST on housing, and their founder said, this is smart. Mr. Speaker, those who are fighting to end homelessness, like my solution of axing the sales tax on new homes, will he accept my plan to axe the tax and build the homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, like I said, if he wants to be helpful on the issue against homeless, maybe he could give a call to his fellow Conservatives, the premiers of Saskatchewan and Ontario, to agree to accept the money we're putting on the table that they could match to support people living in encampments and fight homelessness effectively on the ground. But he won't do that. And what else he won't do is get his security clearance so that he can actually protect his fellow MPs, protect Canadians in this democracy. He refuses to get the security clearance necessary to keep Canadians safe. That's not the kind of leadership Canadians have.
This is all I can think about when I see Trudeau on the screen.
Systemic anti-black discrimination is widespread in the public service. In fact, the Treasury Board Secretariat found that the Canadian Human Rights Commission discriminated against black employees. Now, instead of supporting these workers, right now the Liberal government is fighting these workers in court. So will the Prime Minister stop fighting black employees in court and settle the Thompson class action lawsuit?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in extending the UN decade of support for people of African descent, this government has done more to recognize systemic bias, systemic discrimination, unconscious.
Oh, we're going to talk about discrimination and systemic whatever this and that, Trudeau? Oh my God. Do I need to pull up another picture?
Responding to the needs by black communities to access more capital to create the prosperity that they so need to be able to create for their communities. Why we're continuing to invest in anti-black racism initiatives, continuing to stand with the black community. There's always more to do, and we will do it, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Abortion is health care. 1 in 3 people who can get pregnant will need abortion care in their lifetime. But for close to a decade, this Liberal government failed to remove barriers, letting Conservative premiers cut access to abortion. And this Conservative leader secretly voted 5 times to take away the right to choose. Wow. Canadians want to see access to reproductive health care protected. Why have the Liberals not enforced the Canada Health Act to protect equal access to health care including abortion.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my daughter is in the gallery today, so I want her to hear me as long as everyone else does. This government is unequivocally pro-choice. We will always defend a woman's right to choose, full stop. That's why, Mr. Speaker, we've actually pulled back funding from provinces that haven't been delivering access to abortion in their jurisdictions, why we will continue to enforce the Canada Health Act. But, Mr. Speaker, it is the Conservative Party, with its dangerous attack on women's rights, that should have people worried right across the country. At a time where we've seen Roe versus Wade overturned, attacks on women's rights, the Conservative leader can't stand up and defend women's rights.
I'd like to remind the Right Honourable Prime Minister and all members, please, to not make mention to people in the galleries. It is against the rules of this place. Alors, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for St. Laurent. Mr. Speaker, our government has always protected women's right to choose, but the anti-choice lobby of the caucus and the Conservative caucus and the leader are controlling it. And some of these anti-choice organizations that support the Conservatives use deceptive tactics to deter women from accessing a complete array of reproductive care. Can the Prime Minister tell Canadians about the measures taken by our government to protect women from these centres? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the member for St. Laurent for her diligent work on defending women's rights. We have heard too many women tell us about how they experienced shame, and that's unacceptable. That's why yesterday we presented a bill to force these centres to be more transparent. Otherwise, they risk losing their status as a charitable organization. Unlike the Conservative leader, the Liberals will always defend women's right to choose and their right to access the health care they need, including the entire array of reproductive care services. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister says that he opposes taking the GST off of new homes. He wants to keep the taxes high and keep housing prices rising. His solution is to fund more bureaucracy. And what has that done? Well, that's doubled housing costs. It's caused a 39% increase in homelessness rates. So I've got an idea. Why don't we let Canadians decide? If he won't have a carbon tax election, why don't we have a housing tax election and allow Canadians to decide on more bureaucracy through him or axing the sales tax through me?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians watching today will see that the Leader of the Opposition is refusing to stand up and take a strong position in protecting women's rights unequivocally in this House. He can't because his MPs won't let him. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, he is refusing to protect his MPs by not getting the security clearance necessary to get fully informed on threats to our democracy from foreign powers. Why?
God, Trudeau's such a weirdo. How did he just tie that into his original statement?
Interference, seriously.
That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, his tinfoil hat conspiracy theories and misinformation will not distract. We stand up for women's rights every day on this side. It has been our 20-year-long policy in the Conservative Party that there will be no restrictions on women's reproductive choices or on abortion. He knows that, but he doesn't want to discuss the issues that we do disagree on, which are this: housing.
Oh, Trudeau, he's gifted, all right. He's a special little boy, that's for sure.
That drives them up further. We want to help women and men own a home, so will he vote for a housing tax election?
Colleagues.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd be interested to see him do a very simple thing in his next answer. Switch the order of the statements he just made. Anytime he talks about unequivocally standing up for women's rights,
There's
in this
unequivocally
House,
again.
crickets from the Conservative backbench. That is because consistently members of the Conservative Party of Canada move forward measures that restrict and restrain women's rights, that limit women's rights to full suite of reproductive services. The Conservative Party members do not stand up for women's rights, so nor does the...
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, speaking of women's rights, just yesterday, his former parliamentary secretary came out publicly, Selina Cesar-Chavan, and said that she was abused, intimidated, and mistreated by this Prime Minister. That he used her for his fake feminist agenda, and that he treated her like garbage, Mr. Speaker. It is terrible the way he exercises hypocrisy. Housing hypocrisy by doubling costs, tax hypocrisy by raising people's prices while flying around the world. How about putting an end to the hypocrisy and calling a carbon tax election?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
What is fascinating, Mr. Speaker, is the spectacle of watching...
I would ask the honourable members to not speak when they are not recognized by the chair. I insist. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is fascinating to see the lengths to which the Conservative leader will go to avoid the issue of national security, to avoid the issue of safety of Canadians, to avoid talking about issues of foreign interference, because he cannot answer why he refuses to take the security clearance that would allow him to access top secret information focused on keeping his members safe, keeping our democracy safe. We know that foreign governments interfered in the last leadership campaigns in the Conservative Party. He wants nothing to do.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, Prime Minister is coming unglued. He's flailing around, spreading conspiracy theories and demonstrable disinformation in order to distract from the fact that not only did he double housing costs, double gun crime, and double food bank use, but now 24 of his own MPs want to fire him. We can't go on like this with a Prime Minister who admits he can't even sleep at night because he is so in knots. Will he let his 24 dissident MPs vote freely on a non-confidence motion so we can have a carbon tax election?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm confused about what happened. The Conservative Party used to be out defense of Canada, but they dropped the defense spending to below 1% last time they were in office. They're supposed to be about law and order, but they stand against stronger measures on gun control. And they're supposed to be about national security, and the leader of the Conservative Party refuses to get the necessary security briefings to keep our democracy safe and to distinguish from the conspiracy theories that float around what is fact and what is fiction. Why won't he trust our national security agencies?
The Honourable Member for Montcalm. As of today, advance requests for aid will be allowed in Quebec. Finally, Quebecers diagnosed with a serious and incurable disease leading to incapacity will be able to submit a request to their doctors. But these doctors are still worried about the lack of legal protection because of this government's continued refusal to amend the criminal code. It's a lack of courage and a dangerous game the Liberals are playing. It harms patients and doctors who are worried about being sued. Will the Prime Minister show some compassion and amend the criminal code without delay as proposed by C390? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, medical assistance in dying is a deeply personal and sensitive choice that involves individuals and their families in a difficult decision. The potential expansion of eligibility in terms of these advance requests is a major decision. Therefore, we are launching a national conversation, and we will not take any legal steps in this bill yet because we want to cooperate with Quebec and with all provinces and territories in order to attentively assess the next steps. Thank you. The Honourable Member from Okan. It's not time to talk, it's time to act, because I might remind the Prime Minister that his government is a minority and could fall at any moment. Now,
then do it. Stop threatening it, you fucking sacks of shite. My God, empty words and empty threats, they mean nothing. Your words mean nothing, Santa Claus, beardless Santa.
On the contrary, the far-right Conservative wing is opposed to MAID, so why is the Prime Minister putting the fate of these patients in the hands of the Conservatives? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I fully agree with my colleague from the Bloc that the Conservatives represent a major risk for the freedoms of Canadians across the country, but we must not make any decisions that are too hasty on such an issue. We must ensure the protection of the most vulnerable Canadians and Quebecers, and we must ensure that people can make a free and informed decision. That is why we need to take the time necessary to work with the provinces and territories to evaluate the different issues and ensure that Canadians make the right choice. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Years of releasing violent gun criminals and leaving our borders open to smugglers. This Prime Minister has presided over a 116% increase in gun violence. And yet he was out boasting about it on Twitter. The Toronto Police Union, the largest police union in Canada, said his words were out of touch. They were offensive to victims and brave officers. So, given that his approach has doubled gun crime, why won't he accept our common sense plan to lock up the gun criminals, scan the cans, and stop the crime?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when the Conservative Party's plan on guns is to unfreeze the market on handguns and legalize assault-style weapons across this country, nobody can take them seriously on the issue of guns. But they are talking about national security now and safety, which...
Nobody takes you serious when you call them assault-style guns. You sound insane.
To get the necessary security briefings to show Canadians that he's capable of taking national security seriously.
I ask the members to not carry on loud conversations, and particularly the Honourable Member from Waterloo across the aisle while she is not being recognized. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Unfreeze. Mr. Speaker, it has never been easier for a criminal to get a handgun, in addition to which that he's allowed it to be legal today to own a handgun. He has brought in an amnesty on his own gun ban, re-legalizing all the guns that he said he was going to ban. And 4 years after he held that big press conference with a scary-looking black gun on the front of his podium, a made-in-Hollywood-style cartoon, gun crime is actually up dramatically. So why doesn't he actually ban the criminals, secure the borders, and stop the crime?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, slogans furnished to him by the gun lobby don't keep Canadians safe. Canadians know that significant common sense gun control measures, which we have put forward, are what is making a difference in keeping Canadians safe, and we will continue to do that.
Right.
But we are now at least talking about security issues, so Canadians may be wondering, why is it that the leader of the Conservative Party continues to refuse to get the appropriate clearances from our national security agencies so he can take the issue of foreign interference, including against his own party, seriously?
Once again, as I just mentioned before, I'm going to ask all members, please, not to have conversations across the way, including the member from Dufferin-Caledon. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, there's been an increase in an increase of 800% with regard to since the Prime Minister has allowed these hard drug consumption sites. People who live in that community are terrified because of the chaos that this Prime Minister has sown. Under Section 56(1) of CDSA, to close these drug consumption sites, will he do so? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the opioid crisis and drug addiction is a scourge that profoundly impacts Canadians across this country. Our approach is science-based, it's fact-based, and also we use compassion, and we try to work with the organizations on the ground, with the provinces and the municipalities and experts. We will continue to take this approach. We will not criminalize people who have mental health problems, and that is going to save lives, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Humber River, Black Creek.
Mr. Speaker, our government has always been clear that ensuring a woman's freedom of choice should be protected. But many Canadians are rightfully worried that a Conservative government would not protect this fundamental right. It is alarming that women's rights and freedoms are under attack in the Conservative Party. Can the Prime Minister tell us how our Liberal government will continue to protect a woman's right to make decisions about her own body?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member for Humber River Black Creek is right. Yesterday, we announced that we're holding pregnancy crisis centres accountable for preventing women from making informed choices. While we're protecting women's freedom of choice, the Conservative Party is trying to roll it back. Any party leader that allows their MPs to introduce anti-choice legislation, actively recruits anti-choice candidates, and takes their money cannot say that they are pro-choice. Right. It's time the Conservative Party ends their filibuster and allows this House to vote on reproductive rights. Right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
After 9 years, 9 million Canadians live in food insecurity, according to Food Banks Canada. 9 million, that's 23% of our population. 23%, twice as high as the rate in the United States. Food prices have risen 36% faster in Canada than in the States, and that gap has happened at the same time as the implementation of the carbon tax and all the government greed. Now he wants to quadruple the carbon tax and starve even more people. Why not have a carbon tax election so Canadians can vote to axe the tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Canada Carbon Rebate puts more money back in the pockets of the middle class and people working hard to join it. The Parliamentary Budget Officer recognized that 8 out of 10 Canadians are better off with the Canada Carbon Rebate than the price on pollution costs them in their jurisdictions. So the Leader of the Opposition is proposing to take away money from vulnerable families across this country at a time they need it. What the Leader of the Opposition is also doing is refusing to get the security clearance necessary to keep Canadians safe by getting the briefings from our security agencies that talk about foreign interference.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr.
Speaker, if the carbon tax made people better off, we wouldn't see a doubling of food.
Exactly, Frosty. It is such a non-issue here. We live in such a far-left country that being abolished or removed is not even in the realm of possibility. And here we are, still debating it. Holy fuck, man.
After year, over the last half decade. Turns out if you tax the farmers who make the food, the truckers who ship the food, the grocers who sell the food, you tax all who buy the food. So if he really wants to quadruple that tax, why not have a carbon tax election so Canadians can decide?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The Canada carbon rebate puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians right across the country.
Bullshit.
And it's top economists, scientists, and the
Some
parliamentary
more
budget officer
bullshit.
who've declared that. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we know the Leader of the Opposition won't listen to experts. He won't even listen to our national security experts who are trying to let him know.
Are these experts bought and paid for by you, Mr. Trudeau? Are these the experts that stroke your ego, make you feel good about yourself?
The fact that he has refused to get a security clearance because the responsibility of Prime Minister is to protect all Canadians, including apparently Conservative MPs.
That's right. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, more division to distract. You know, here we have 2 million people lining up at food banks. 1/4 of Canadians live in food insecurity, a level twice as high as in the United States. Food prices rising 36% faster in Canada than in the U.S., coinciding with the carbon tax coming into force. Now he wants to quadruple it. 56% of food banks say they're literally rationing food rationing in a first world country, Mr. Speaker. Before he starves more people, why can't we have a carbon tax election and axe the tax?
The Right Honourable.
We should have a Mandarin buffet election so we can feed everybody.
Food insecurity, instead of just wanting to politicize and instrumentalize it, he would have supported our national school food program. Right. But he does not. What he also will not do is take seriously his responsibility as a party leader in this House, as someone who desperately wants to become Prime Minister, to actually get the security clearance and therefore the briefings necessary to protect our democracy, our institutions, and his team members from the threats of foreign interference. That, Mr. Speaker, is absolutely irresponsible.
That's right.
The Honourable Member from Kitchener-Conestoga.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Public Safety Committee heard from top national security and law enforcement officials on Indian interference in Canada. Despite the concerning evidence, the Conservative leader refuses to speak directly on this issue, choosing instead to hide behind his MPs. The government has been clear that all responsible leaders need security clearances so they can make responsible decisions to protect Canadians. Can the Prime Minister explain why the Conservative leader should get his security clearance, get briefed, and protect our democracy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Kitchener-Conestoga for his hard work. Canadians shouldn't be surprised that the Conservative leader refuses to call out Indian foreign interference. He's refused to get briefed up, to get the security clearance necessary, to get the understanding that our national security agencies want him to have to better be able to both protect his own MPs, to protect our institutions, and to protect Canadians. Let me put it in phrases that perhaps the Leader of the Opposition will eventually understand. Get the clearance, get the briefings, protect Canadians.
This is our Prime Minister.
The Honourable Member from North Island, Powell River.
Canadians who serve in the military deserve our gratitude and support, but we've learned that for at least 19 years, this Liberal government and the former Conservative government overcharged veterans and their families for long-term care beds. Again, veterans and their families have to fight this government tooth and nail to get what they are due. Canadians need to know who did what and when. Will the Prime Minister immediately end this long-term care gouging?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Is that like the first intelligent thing the NDP has ever said?
Affairs has asked her officials to investigate this matter further. We are committed to supporting our veterans, have been since day one. That's why we invested over $11 billion in new services and supports for veterans since 2016, including reopening the 9 veteran service centers that the Harper government shuttered, rehiring 1,000 staff that the Harper government had fired, and we're continuing to work to improve the services and benefits and supports for veterans and for their families.
The honourable member from Spadina, Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wants to talk about national security. Let's do it. On New Year's Eve, Canadians will be ushering in the Hogue Commission's final report on foreign interference. But meanwhile, media continue to provide insight as to who are the infamous 11 parliamentarians in the pocket of China. Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister have trouble sitting at the cabinet table when he must wittingly know that at least one of his ministers is not working in the service of Canada, or is he entirely witless?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that was an absolutely disgraceful display of irreverence and unseriousness in a place that deserves a serious contemplation of issues of national security. But it doesn't surprise me he's choosing to sit with the Conservative Party of Canada because their leader won't even get the necessary clearance to get the necessary briefing to keep Canadians safe. It's irresponsible, Mr. Speaker.
Oh my goodness. He got angry there.
Order.
Oh, and just like that, we get cut off from the feed. Lovely. Okay.
Affaires courantes.
Routine proceedings. Tabling of documents.
Routine proceedings.
Introduction of government bills. Statements by ministers. Reports from interparliamentary delegations. The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 34-1, I have the honour to present to the House, in both official languages, the following reports of the Canada-Europe Parliamentary Association respecting its participation at the second part of the 2024 Ordinary Session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in Strasbourg, France, from April 15th to 19th, 2024. The Canada-Europe Parliamentary Association respecting its participation at the third part of the 2024 Ordinary Session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in Strasbourg, France, from June 24th to 28th, 2024, and a revised copy of the Canada-Europe Parliamentary Association respecting its participation at the Atlantic Brook German-Canadian Conference in Berlin, Germany, from May 12th to the 14th, 2024. Mr. Speaker, I have 2 signed copies in French and 2 signed copies in English of each individual report.
So, did the Bloc get what they wanted? Like, what the hell's going on here? All that hype up for nothing? The Bloc sitting there saying that the Liberal Trudeau government's gonna fall? Nothing happens? Shocking. Absolutely shocking. Fucking hell.
Que tous ceux qui s'opposent à ce...
All those opposed to the honourable members moving the motion will please say nay.
Here we go, voting time. What are we voting for?
Accordingly, the House
What do we got going on?
Motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay.
Adopté.
Carried.
Oh. What the hell is that?
I'm afraid I do not. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, just for clarity, it was kind of skipped over really quick because of the voices inside the chamber at the end of question period. It's just to table some petitions. That's all it is.
The responses to petitions.
I'll ask again. All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. Will please say nay. And we do not.
What is going on?
Unanimous consent. Présentation de rapport Présentation de rapport de comité. The honourable member from Humber River Black Creek.
I have the honour to present in both official languages the 21st report of the Standing Committee on International Labour, referring to Canadian supply chains and the issue of forced labour. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member, l'honorable député de Vaudreuil-Soulanges.
The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, I have the honour to present in both official languages the 19th report of the Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities, entitled the Erie Lake Connector, a project in the best interest of the public. Pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee asked the government to table an overall response to the report.
Dépôt de projet.
Introduction of private members' bills.
Première lecture de projet de loi d'intérêt.
First reading of Senate public bills. Motions. Mr. Boulris, seconded by Mr. Julian, moves that the 12th report of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities, tabled on October 6th, 2023, be concurred in. Debate. The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie.
I think the Bloc duped us.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I'd like to say that I will be sharing my time with a member for
Unless a vote of no confidence comes later today or tomorrow, I think the Bloc either got what they wanted or they don't have the balls.
a matter that is of great interest to Canadians and Quebecers. The housing crisis.
Because we're just going directly into proceedings here, just whatever. Individual bills. Alright, I think that is going to do it for me today. Thank you all for stopping by and watching. Tomorrow might be interesting depending on what happens, but I thought today would have been the day. I thought it would have happened. But of course not. Our government's a joke. Our parliament is special, to say the least. Anyway, have a good day or night wherever you guys are from. Thank you for watching, and I will see you tomorrow, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard.